Today, we're going to break down the powerful framework that the best lawyers use to win debates. It all comes from this fantastic book, The Tools of Argument by Joel Trachtman. And by the end of this, you're going to understand their secret.
Okay, let's start with a feeling I bet we've all had. You're in a debate, you have the facts on your side, you know you're right, and you still lose. It's just so frustrating, right? And it often happens because your opponent isn't necessarily more correct, they're just better at the game of arguing.
You know, this famous line from The Godfather, it isn't really about crime. It's about a totally different kind of power. A lawyer's briefcase, it's filled with contracts and laws and texts, words that, when you use them correctly, carry the full force of the state. Now, that is a power that can be way more decisive than just brute force.
So what's the secret to wielding this power? Well, it's not some kind of magic, and you definitely don't need a law degree to get it. It's a disciplined, two-part method that is the absolute foundation of how the best lawyers think.
The engine of all this is a process called analysis and synthesis. So instead of just having a gut reaction like, that's fraud, a lawyer first breaks that claim down into its essential ingredients. We call these elements. Then, they check the facts against each element, one by one. Only after all that do they put it back together to see if they actually have a case.
It's a simple but really powerful four-step process. Think of it like a doctor diagnosing an illness. They don't just guess, right? They have a checklist of symptoms, the elements, for a specific disease. They check the facts, the patient's condition, against each one. If all the boxes are ticked, then they can confidently make their diagnosis. It's that same structured logic.
But here's where it gets really interesting. See, having the best, most logical analysis of the facts, well, that isn't always enough to win. There's another layer to this whole game.
And this brings us to their second secret weapon, procedure. What most of us just dismiss as a technicality is, for a skilled lawyer, an incredibly powerful tool. They understand that the rules of the game, the procedure, are often just as important as the facts of the case.
And this quote just illustrates the strategy perfectly. If the facts aren't on your side, you don't argue the facts, you argue the rules. These procedural arguments, they aren't just little loopholes, they can fundamentally change which rules apply or how they apply, completely altering the outcome. So let's look at a classic power move that top lawyers use all the time, arguing about where the argument should even be happening in the first place.
Before you even get to the main points of a dispute, the first fight is often over something called jurisdiction. A really savvy lawyer will do what's called forum shopping, trying to file a case in a court that's most likely to use laws that are favorable to their side. It's a move that can win the entire game before the main event even begins.
This slide shows the power of this perfectly. Just look at this hypothetical. In a French court, Kansas law applies and the plaintiff wins. But in a Kansas or Japanese court, French law applies and they lose. Same exact facts, different court, completely flipped result. Now that's the power of procedure.
All right, on to power move number 2. This is one you see in boardrooms and political debates every single day, deciding who has to do the proving.
Take a look at this standoff. The debate over this new technology isn't really about the tech itself. The winner will be decided by who successfully sets the burden of proof. Does the company have to prove it's safe, or do the critics have to prove it's unsafe? The answer to that procedural question often decides the entire argument. And maybe the most famous example of this is the principle of innocent until proven guilty. That isn't a statement about facts, it's a procedural rule. It places the burden of proof squarely on the prosecutor, and that shapes the entire dynamic of the justice system.
So, let's pull all of this together. How can you use these tools? Because, believe me, they aren't just for lawyers.
So the secret is this really powerful one-two punch. First, you need a disciplined method to analyze the substance of an argument. And second, you need a strategic mastery of the rules that govern the argument itself. It's about being right on the facts, yeah, but it's also about being right on the procedure.
Now, here's the crucial point. These tools are powerful, but they're ethically neutral. They can be used for reasoned persuasion to get to the truth, or they can be used for sophistry. That's the ancient art of making a weak argument defeat a stronger one.
Understanding this framework gives you a huge advantage. You can build stronger cases for your own ideas, and you can spot the procedural tricks in other people's arguments. You now have the tools. The only question left is, how are you going to use them?
And those are the core secrets of how the best lawyers think, argue, and ultimately win.